Greetings, kids, to Simon Chartier's New York Stories. Hey, you could probably tell it's pretty cold, right? I'm wearing two hoodies. Uh, it's cold out today. But anyway, this is the story. This is my most requested story, and it concerns my peripheral connection to the Ramones. So it's a New York story. It goes back to the 60s. It starts about 1966, and I lived on Yellowstone Boulevard and 65th Road in Forest Hills, Queens. All right, and it was my parents had gotten back together in 1964. When I was 5 years old, they got back together. We lived in Forest Hills from 64 through 67. So for 4 years we lived there. I recently went back there a couple times and looked at my old building. It has not changed since then. Everything is exactly the same it was back then. Really weird. Anyway, so we were all living in this little tiny one-bedroom apartment, little kind of closet bedroom. My parents were sleeping on the couch in the living room, and I was 6 or 7 years old, and I was really starting to get into rock and roll. I was, of course, I was aware of the Beatles and the Stones, and then there was this kid next door, Nucky Citron. That was his name, Nucky, and his mom, Tikva, she would babysit us sometimes. You know, my parents weren't around much, and I kind of ran around in the street a lot by myself. Didn't really go to school very much. My first day at PS 175, all the other kids in the school surrounded me and started like hitting me and beating me and kicking me and kind of beat me up before we even went in my first class. So my whole attitude was fuck school. So I used to just run around the street by myself. And I taught myself how to read by reading all my dad's books. And when I was like 6 years old, I used to steal my dad's Playboys. He hid them so my mom wouldn't find them, but then I found them and I stole them and I used to read them. So that was the beginning right there. So anyway, there was Nucky Citron. He showed me the first rock and roll records that I got into. Like he had a record player and records, and he had long hair, and he played the guitar. And there was two kids in this building. It's hard to explain. It was like two apartment buildings with this courtyard between them, and there was this other kid, Danny, that lived in the other building, and he played guitar also, and he was a little older than me, but I used to go over to his house and listen to him play guitar and he could play This Magic Moment by Jay and the Americans. And his dad had all this weird shit on the wall. Like, I'll never forget it. Like, the German Battle Eagle and the Iron Cross and all these German army decorations. So I used to ask him, hey, Danny, which side was your dad on in the war? You know, so it was like Danny, whose father was a Nazi. I used to go over his house and he'd play guitar. So this whole building was weird because it wasn't weird. It was kind of cool. We had people from all over the world. We had people from Pakistan. We had people from Jamaica, people from Poland. We had Russians. We had a lot of Jewish people that were survivors of the camps. So there was a lot of people that much younger than I am now walking around with the numbers on their arms, the tattoos from the concentration camps. So, you know, and then I would go out. There was like people from every nationality. So next door, I guess these kids were about 16 or 17, and they had a band, and they had like electric guitars and drums. And, you know, I was just getting into all the stuff, the Beatles. I had Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs. I loved them. I loved Wooly Bully. I loved 96 Tears, and I loved Roger Miller, King of the Road. right? Trailers for sale or rent, room to rent. I guess it's why I always kind of played rockabilly and country music, because one of the first records I liked was a country record. So these kids were playing and playing, and I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. I used to listen and practice through the wall, and they were really nice to me. One time I went over there, and they had these guitars, and the guy had this guitar, and it had sunburst finish on it, and I thought that was so cool. And this one kid, he had long hair. He let me get behind the drum set and play the drums a little bit, like bang, bang, bang. I was just a little kid. So my father hated rock and roll, and he hated that these kids were practicing next to him. So they were playing, and I remember he went up to the door, and he was punching the door, boom, boom, and he was screaming, comunista, comunista, maricones, maricones, communists, homosexuals. And he was screaming, I will kill you, I will kill you, estúpido, I will kill you, at them, right? So he was threatening to kill him, right? So then years later, my dear friend Tim Sullivan, he got me a job working for Dee Dee Ramone. And this was at the time when he had the Remains with Marky on drums, and Dee Dee's wife Barbara was the bass player. So I would drive around in my van. I would pick Dee Dee up at the Chelsea Hotel. That's where he was living. And I would drive him around wherever he wanted to do. He used to go up to Monticello a lot. So I'd drive him to Monticello, and he would, pay me gas and everything. I went to his house, go hang out with him. And then I was, Dee Dee wanted to learn guitar. Like, he wanted to learn Chuck Berry and B.B. King, who were like my two biggest influences on the guitar, right? So I would be trying to give Dee Dee guitar lessons. Now, I love Dee Dee to pieces. I love spending time with him. I spent a lot of time with him because I would also drive him everywhere. And I would also tune his guitars for him. And he would use my guitar too. He would be one of the reasons why I love Dee Dee is that Dee Dee and my grandfather both had the exact same accent and speech patterns. So Dee Dee would be like, Simon, I hate my guitar. I hate my guitar. It sucks. It's a terrible guitar. I'm going to smash it into a million pieces. Can I use your guitar? Can I use your guitar? And I'd let him use like my Les Paul Jr., I mean, he had a beautiful guitar. He had this beautiful Gibson Explorer. I don't know why he didn't like it. I picked up and played it, and I thought it was great. But he liked to use my red Les Paul Jr. when he played with the Remains. So I would let him use it. And it still has scratches in it that he put in it. So anyway, and my grandfather talked the exact same way. He used to be, Simon, always eat your prunes every day. I ate my prunes last night, and this morning before breakfast, I had an enormous bowel movement. And that's at the breakfast table, right? So, Dee Dee talked just like my grandfather, right? So, anyway, I loved working for Dee Dee. I used to give him guitar lessons. But he would get very frustrated very fast. I would try to show him like Chuck Berry, Johnny B. Good, or various Chuck Berry or B.B. King riffs. But if he couldn't get it right away, he'd get really frustrated and really angry. He would kind of start to flip out because he could like turn on a dime. Like he could just be one way and then boom, he's another way. He was kind of bipolar or something. But I loved Dee Dee. So anyway, I go to see. I got on the guest list to see the premiere of The End of the Century, the Ramones movie. I got on the guest list to go see it, and I brought my kids with me, who was 14 and 12 at that point, and we all went together to see End of the Century, and I remember because they ran out of space in the theater, and these two yuppies tried to cut ahead of us. And I was with my kids, and they told me, "You can't come in. We're full." And my kids go, those people cut the line on us. They cut the line on us. And so the ushers threw the other people out. They were like a couple of yuppies. They cut the line, but they let me and the kids in. So we went to see the movie. And there in the movie, Tommy Ramone is talking about the building he grew up in. And holy shit, that's my building. That's my exact building. I live in apartment 1E. So the next year, Simon the Bar Sinisters, we opened for Tommy Ramone's band at Bowery Poetry Club. That was the name of the place. So we opened. We played with Tri-State Conspiracy, and then Tommy Ramone's bluegrass band. He was playing bluegrass. Uncle Monk. That was the name of the band. So I go up and I talk to Tommy, and I was like, I lived in your building. I lived in 1E. And he was like, yeah, I lived on the 5th floor. I said, do you know Nucky Citron? He goes, yeah, that was our band. Nucky was the guitar player. Tommy was the guitar player, and then Joey was the drummer. So it's when Joey was playing drums and not singing, and Tommy was playing guitar, not the drums. I don't think they had a bass player. I just think it was 2 guitars and drums. So we talked about it. I grew up in your building. Remember all the people from the Holocaust, and remember all that shit that was like, that was going on, and we talked about it. So it turns out I lived next door to a very early, like Joey, Tommy, and this kid Nucky, their band, and my father threatened to kill Joey Ramone and Tommy Ramone in 1966. So the one other story I'm going to tell, I love this story. I was driving Marky and Dee Dee home from someplace. It wasn't too late at night. It was 10 at night, right? So I called my ex-wife. I was like, listen, I know it's a school night. I know the kids are in their pajamas, but I got like Marky Ramone and Dee Ramone in my van, and I'm driving them. I got to come right by. Will you let the kids come for a ride with us? I want them to meet the Ramones. So my kids come downstairs. This is like Jane is 10, so Margaret's 8, and they come down like in their pajamas with like a coat over their pajamas, and they come down, and I surprised them in Brooklyn. Like they didn't know that it was the Ramones. So they get in the car, and it's like, hey, this is Dee Dee Ramone, this is Marky Ramone. So like my kids had already, my ex-wife, she's been a punk rocker from way back, and my kids were punk rockers since they were fetuses, so they got into the van, and it's like Dee Dee Ramone and Marky Ramone, and my kids were like, oh my God, Dee Dee. They were talking to Dee Dee, and Marky and Dee Dee, they couldn't have been nicer to my kids. They couldn't have been nicer. They were so nice. Marky gave my kids drumsticks that he autographed, and Dee Dee was asking him all kinds of questions and talking to him. The only little glitch is we drove by a place that was on your 9th Street and 5th Avenue in Brooklyn, right? We drove, and it says Dee Dee Donuts. And I was like, look, Dee Dee, there's Dee Dee Donuts, man. You want a donut? Come on, man, let's get some donuts. And Dee Dee was so pissed. He was like, he was so pissed that there was anything in the universe that was a Dee Dee that wasn't him. He was like angry about it. But he recovered quickly, and I drove him home, and then, I kind of lost touch with all those guys because Dee Dee moved to California, and then he passed away. I know Marky is still out there, man. Hello, Marky. So that's my story, like just my story of being like on the periphery of the Ramones. I hope you enjoyed it. And I also got to say this: if you guys have you guys like these New York stories? Here's my info. Throw a couple of bucks in the tip jar. PayPal, SimonNyStoriesRamones@hotmail.com. Also, these videos will be on Simon and the Bar Sinisters channel on YouTube. If you want to listen to my records, it's SimonNyStoriesRamones@bandcamp.com. All right? So, all right, guys. Mwah.